So for tonight, we have these new microphones. I'm going to give them to, there should be one for this side of the room, one for this side of the room. Please do not speak without the microphone. I want to make sure that everybody can hear. Before I hand this to our co-chair to get us started, I wanted to acknowledge the fact that as of today, we have been meeting for exactly 1 year. Our first meeting was 365 days ago. Thank you guys for this. That is, I am so excited. I got to be honest with you. Our first meeting, there were 40 to 60 people in attendance. I had absolutely no idea what to expect. I just knew that we were going to get together. We were going to talk about making change, and we were going to try and have an impact. Didn't know exactly how that would look or where we would be today. The fact that we are sitting here in this room, that we have an established committee, that we have an established charter, that we have established leadership, and that we are working on actual advocacy issues. We aren't just sitting here in a circle talking to each other about what needs to happen. We are actually trying to do things. We are trying to advocate for a better community. And I am so grateful. It gives me chills. Y'all showing up here every month is exactly. It's awesome. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that y'all have let me be a part of this. So thank you for that. Please feel free to grab some anniversary snacks. They're almost the same as the other snacks. There's just cupcakes this time. Oh, and a second bottle of Sprite, because what would an anniversary party for this group be without an obscene amount of Sprite? Daisy, you might not know this, but we don't do other soda here.
Oh, just Sprite.
This is a Sprite group.
Got it.
With that in mind, I am going to hand it over to our co-chair to get our meeting started.
Good evening, everybody. And very simply, because we are here, like we all gathered, we are ready to call the meeting into order and begin on our agenda today. And begin our righteous cause.
All right, meeting called to order. And that was about 5:34 for the record. All right. So first, we're going to talk about some committee procedures. You will see this. If you have a meeting packet, if you don't have a meeting packet, they're just right there on the little brown rolly thing over there on the right-hand side. Also, please make sure you sign in if you haven't already. So we just wanted to go through a few committee procedures. This was a request by multiple members in the committee that we have this discussion. So let's go ahead and do it. So you will see, again, just on the very back side, first page of the agenda, right behind the agenda, some committee procedures. First and foremost, membership. To be a member of the Lived Experience Advisory Committee, you must first be a member of the COC. I look around this room and I think right now, almost everybody here has completed their application. Good, sir. I have looked and I still don't see it, but you and I are going to get together after this meeting and I'm going to help you with it, okay? Because I want to make sure you get your stipend tonight. Everybody else, I think I have your COC application, so thank you for getting that in. At our last meeting, we established there would be between 5 and 20 members of this committee. We will not go over 20 members. So for this year, we just need to keep that in mind. And then at the end of the year, we might want to talk about a process for membership approval, because it could just be the first 20 members that apply get accepted, or it could be that we have more specific criteria, but we can cross that bridge later on in the year. For absences, if you are not going to be in attendance, please touch base with myself, with Daisy, with leaders. Can you please raise your hands if you are a Lived Experience Committee leader? There you go. Please reach out to one of these three folks, myself, Daisy, or even COC leadership, Chair Kathleen Beckman. One of us will be happy to talk about accommodations if you need it. If you have a big health problem going on, this is not your top concern. Your family, your health, those are your #1 priorities. I think that they should continue to be your #1 priorities. So we will make accommodations. We have online attendance if you need it. So just reach out to one of us. Nobody should be missing more than 3 meetings in a calendar year though. If you miss more than 3 meetings in a calendar year, you may be removed from the membership roster. Not the COC membership, just the committee membership, okay? To begin our meetings, our co-chairs, one of our 2 co-chairs will call the meeting to order, and that means the meeting has officially started. The meeting officially ends when they adjourn the meeting, and that means we're all done, no official business is gonna take place, and we can all go wherever it is we're going afterwards. Could somebody please let that nice gentleman in? Thank you, Daniel. What I'm hearing is, you're just hoping everybody gets a little more exercise today. Okay, so for our meeting agendas, of course, the meeting agendas are provided prior to the meetings. They include a lot of information that you might need to review during the meeting. Sometimes there are things that will require a vote in here. So those things will always be included in the packet. I will almost never ask you to make a vote on something I have not provided in a packet. And if I do, we can always push that vote to the next meeting. If something comes up urgently, needs a vote, we'll have a conversation about it. But really, voting stuff, it'll be in the packet. Eligible lived experience committee members, that is who is eligible to vote. Guests may attend all meetings. We welcome everybody to come to these meetings. You have to be a registered committee member to vote. We're just going through some committee procedures.
How do you know if you're, I have no idea what's going on.
So,
I have no idea if I got on the committee.
so you did, I saw you sign in on the back page, but your name actually was on the front page, and that means you are a registered committee member. So you are good to go, and after this meeting, you'll be eligible for a stipend.
What's your name? Mary Robertson, basic name, Mary Robertson.
Yep. So everybody on that front printed sheet there, you are a registered committee member. If you had to write your name on the sign-in sheet, you are not officially on my committee roster. So let's talk about that. All right, that is a good question, a good point of clarification. All right, so let's see, what else do we have going on here? If there is an item for voting, it'll be called an action item in your packet. So if you look at the agenda, you'll see information. That means I'm gonna stand up here and I'm gonna tell you guys stuff. Action, that means we're gonna vote. You guys are gonna vote yay or nay. Yay means yes, I vote to approve. Nay means no, no, thank you, I do not want that. Or you can abstain, which means you go on the record as saying, I neither vote yes nor no, I'm present, but I am not voting. So you got that? Yay for voting, nay for no thank you, and abstain for, I don't really want to vote on that. After that, discussion items. That is the other thing that you might see on your agenda. Those are items that we are going to have a robust discussion about. Those are the parts where we do our breakout groups, where there's a lot of things that we have to talk about. Maybe it's not an action item, but there are a lot of things that we have to work out. That's what those items are there for. Okay, so those are just a few of the committee procedures. Before we get into really talking about discussions, which I'm going to hand over to co-chair Gary Small for, are there any questions about the committee procedures as we've seen them so far? All right, Mr. Small, you want to come on up? And as you guys know, feel free to ask questions later if you have them. Never speak now and forever hold your peace.
Evening, everybody. I'd like to first start off by, when you have the microphone to speak, please speak close enough to the microphone. As you can see, it drops down, you no longer pick up your voice. So please speak legibly and into the microphone so we can hear you. All right, it also adds it to the recording. One of the things I wanted to cover was that we seem to be, when we're here in the committee, we are under time constraints. We're here for an agenda. We have to get serious now. We've been existing for a year. Time for the gloves to come off, and let's get serious about this. When we're on a discussion, let's stick to on topic. If we're going off to a tangent, we're burning up our minutes and our time. If there's a topic that is critical enough that we need to discuss it, bring it up to one of the co-chairs or the secretary. We will add it to the next meeting's agenda and discuss it in full committee. If we have to take a vote on something, then we shall, but we will address it as a committee at that point. That way, nothing gets overlooked. For instance, when we had that training session last time, we spent a lot of time going off on sidetrack conversation, and we missed out some of our training. All right, and that's it. I'm not getting on anybody. I'm just saying we have to focus on the topic at hand. You know, try to stick with that. I'm part Cherokee in our lodge. we have what's called a talking feather. Who has that feather speaks, everyone else listens. This is our talking feather. Whoever has the microphone has the floor. You know, when they're done speaking, if necessary, we can hand the mic over, but everybody gets a chance to speak and be heard. That's important. You know, one of the agreements that we have is speaking in an open forum. You know, that way everyone gets heard. But the critical thing is that we need to stay on topic. We're here on their agenda, for instance, to deal with the survey or whatever topic it may be. Try to avoid going off onto a side tangent conversation. As I said, if it's important conversation, right, or topic that needs to be addressed, right. We'll add that to the next agenda. We're gonna start the secretary, the other co-chair, and myself, we can add it to the agenda next time, bring the discussion up in a full committee discussion, and we'll handle that as a committee versus just interrupting each other and not making constructive time. Because we only have a certain amount of time for a committee. So we're running under time constraints, and that affects with our budget. We do have a budget we need to think about, and time is money. So that's the main thing I wanted to bring up, is that we've existed for a year now. So we've elected leadership, we've gotten our feet wet. Let's do what we're here to do. We're here to make a difference. We're here to get something done. We got an epidemic of homelessness in Pinellas County. We're trying to end it. End it. So, but the biggest thing is we got to make sure that we're heard. The farther this is away from our mouth, the less it picks up. So, okay, that's the best way I could do it. All right.
Y'all know if you can't hear Gary that you're not doing something right. Gary and I might be the loudest people that I know. All right.
My grandfather.
You know what? You don't know my mother either. Okay. So on that note, a couple of things I just wanted to add. Please allow active and equal participation. It is really important that all members have the opportunity to speak. So if you've already talked about something in a discussion point once, go ahead and allow the other folks in the room to have a chance to speak before you raise your hand to speak again. It's not that I don't want to hear what you have to say. I really, really do. I just also want to hear what they have to say. And I hope you do too. So let's try and do that. Let's respect everybody, provide constructive feedback, and actively listen, which means paying attention to what the person is saying without thinking about what you might say in response. Really listening to the other person without your own stuff going on in your head too. So hear what the other person has to say, respect the other person, and I think we should all be pretty good. And if you have other things you want to talk about, please do, like Gary said, write them down and share them with us. I like to call that the parking lot. So any off-topic discussions, it's not that they're not important, we just got to put them in the parking lot. Have y'all ever abandoned a car you did not come back to in a parking lot? I have not. If I park my car, I always come back to it. So let's put off-topic discussion points in the parking lot so we can come back to them later when we have time, okay? All right. So do we have any questions before we move on? Okay. So I'm going to give the microphone to our secretary for the consent agenda. Before we do that, I wanted to note, before anybody calls me out on it, I just want to call myself out on it. This one does not include meeting attendance. I apologize that the attendance list is not included in that. I will add it to the next meeting minutes. My apologies. However, the notes and the minutes from there are all there. They should all be right. It's just that the attendance from that last meeting is missing. My apologies. Secretary? You can ask if anybody has any notes about the minutes and then call for a motion to approve or edit or anything like that.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about the consent agenda? Any notes, any questions, anything that needs to be brought to our attention? Everybody on board? Should we take a vote to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Norm. Norm makes a motion to approve the agenda. Do we have a second? Dan seconds the motion. Agenda approved.
All in favor?
All in favor?
All opposed?
No one opposed? Motion approved.
Thank you very much. Some things we fly through. All right. What do we have going on next? Ooh, okay. COC Executive Committee representation. So I believe we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I want to provide a little bit more information and context before we take a vote. So the Continuum of Care, as we all know, that is the group of organizations, service providers, businesses, faith-based organizations, folks with lived experience, concerned neighbors, I hope they all dance, working together to end homelessness here in our community. The COC, of course, we are a committee of the COC. The COC also has a board of directors. The board of directors is responsible for making a lot of the determinations about what goes on in our community. The COC's board of directors does things like approve funding priorities and sets procedures, standard operating procedures for some of the organizations and programs and whatnot, apply for funding for different programs. So the COC board of directors is in charge of a lot, and they're responsible for doing a lot of good work in our community. I am happy to say that two people in this room, both of our co-chairs, are members of the COC board of directors. Mike was elected to the COC board of directors back in January, and Gary was elected a few months later. Now, that is wonderful. The COC board of directors also has a small group that leads the board of directors. The board of directors itself is like 25 people. There needs to be a small group that, makes small determinations, decides how meeting's gonna go, that kind of thing, and addresses things that we can't address in maybe the larger meeting, or maybe urgent things that come up between meetings. So the COC Executive Committee, that's what we call that group. The Executive Committee includes the COC's chair, that is Kathleen Beckman. She is a former council member in the city of Clearwater. The COC's vice chair, that is St. Pete City Council member Deborah Fix-Sanders. The COC's secretary, that is April Lott. She is the executive director of Directions for Living. The COC's Providers Council, that is Kevin Marone. He is the executive director at Boley Centers, okay? The COC Funders Council chair, that is Chuck Lane. He is, I forget what his title is with the city of Clearwater. It's not city manager, community engagement manager, something like that. Sorry, Chuck, if you're listening to the recording. But Chuck Lane with the city of Clearwater. And I am happy to say, and the immediate past chair of the COC, who is Sean King with Habitat for Humanity. So these are the folks that really lead the COC's board of directors. There is one dedicated seat on the COC Executive Committee for a lived experience board member. That is because, y'all have heard me say before, we really want to try and live up to the idea of nothing about you without you, except for the leadership right now doesn't have anybody with lived experience on it. So we would like to go ahead and, if possible, fill that vacancy. Again, both Gary and Mike are eligible to fill this vacancy, and both are interested in filling this vacancy. So the executive committee has asked me to bring this to the group here and get a formal recommendation. Oh, what is Chuck's?
Assistant Director of Economic Development and Housing Department. Yep.
No wonder I couldn't remember that. His title's just as long as mine. Okay, so Chuck Lane, he is the Economic Development and Housing Department Assistant Director with the city of Clearwater. Still almost messed that up. I'm so sorry, Chuck. Okay, so before we go into the formal recommendations, whether Gary or Mike will fill this seat, which again, any registered member, if your name was printed on that list, you are a registered member. Ron, let's go ahead and call you a registered member because we're going to take care of that application today. So if you're a registered member, you can vote. But do we have any questions before we get into voting on a formal recommendation about the executive committee, what the executive committee does, who they are, or anything like that?
So am I considered a registered member?
Yes. The question there was if she's considered a registered member, and the answer was yes. Any other questions? Oh, Jennifer, hold on.
It states that it meets on the first Friday of every month. Where do they meet at in person?
They meet in person after the board meetings or virtually on months where we don't have board meetings. So Gary and Mike both attend the board meetings. They would just stay afterwards for the odd months. And then on the even months when we don't have board meetings, we all meet virtually.
But where is the location?
Habitat for Humanity,
Okay, on,
the Restore in Clearwater and 49th.
in Almerton?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions?
You're okay. I'll forgive you.
Like, so what do they do at the, like, meetings? As far as like, you know, the whole hour, they just discuss things.
Yeah, so it varies. Mostly a lot of discussing and voting. A lot of discussing and a lot of voting. So during these meetings, we talk about systems that are in place, issues that might come up, data that we need to review. We are talking about the anti-camping law in every meeting that we have right now, not just those meetings. Daisy, what else are we doing in executive committee?
Any policies that need to be approved that were brought up by the Providers Council or the Funders Council have to go there to do a final vote and approval. So just generally anything that the committees are discussing will have to be presented at the executive committee to do final approvals and reviews.
Any other questions? I appreciate the questions. It's important to know what's going on and what you are voting for. Okay, hold on. Sorry, they're plugged in on opposite sides, so I'm just gonna keep going back and forth.
Since the executive committee, I'm sorry,
You're okay.
the executive committee are key people. And they're from different areas in Clearwater or Pinellas. Are they not able to help with housing for the homeless people?
Great question, and that is exactly what we work on in the executive committee meetings. Yep, that is exactly the point, is we are trying to make sure that there is enough housing, enough shelter, and enough services to end homelessness in Pinellas County. It's a really hard thing to do, but we work on it. Great question. Any other questions? No?
I would just like to ask to repeat a little bit of the information. I'm sorry, I was kind of sidetracked about the meetings there. That was the COC Executive
Yes.
Committee,
Yes.
and they meet at the Habitat for Humanity?
They meet in Habitat?
So the executive committee meets every single month. We alternate. Once we meet virtually, once we meet in person. And then the next month we meet virtually, and then the next month we meet in person. On the months that we meet in person, we meet after the COC's Board of Directors meetings. The COC Board of Directors meets every other month on the first Friday of the month at 9 a.m. at Habitat for Humanity. So after those meetings, the executive committee members just stay behind and have their independent meeting. When we do not have COC board meetings, then our executive committee members just meet online at 11 a.m. And yes, those meetings when we are in person are at the Habitat for Humanity Restore in Clearwater.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Get my steps in.
Habitat for Humanity is for families or single people, correct? I believe I've seen single veterans have a Habitat for Humanity house up in the area of Newport Richey, where they have built Habitat for Humanity.
So you would have to ask Habitat for Humanity that. I do not know their regulations. I apologize. I do not know their regulations. We meet there, but they are not, Habitat for Humanity is not necessarily the focus of the meetings. I apologize for not knowing.
Is Habitat for Humanity, a committee member or a part of the COC?
Executive committee.
Sean King with Habitat for Humanity is a member of the executive committee. Any other questions?
So I can tell you a little bit about Habitat for Humanity. So their program is essentially a housing program, and they help you obtain a house through they have kind of like it's like a not necessarily volunteer, but you have to commit certain hours to work with Habitat towards your housing, and they have a financial program that would look at your financial background, help you build credit, give you information about finances, how to get a loan for a home, but you have to put in certain amount of hours in order for you to qualify for the program. And then towards the end, you would eventually buy a home through them, through their particular program, and they'll help you through the entire process.
But they have it for single people also. Single people can qualify for Habitat for Humanity, I believe.
So I know that I worked with Habitat for Humanity previously with a veteran, but they do have a specific criteria. We would have to get that information and send it out to the team because I'm not sure what their eligibility standards are.
That's why it's good to have more than one person here. All right. Any other questions about the executive? Sorry about that. Any other questions about the executive committee? I know I can't get it to stop looking at when you guys see the recording of this meeting, it's largely going to be a recording of this thing with sound behind it. The camera moves to wherever the sound is coming from, but the sound is only coming from here. So I apologize, I'm trying. Any other questions about the executive committee? Is anybody ready or comfortable making a motion? So the motions here would be to recommend either Mike or Gary to serve on the executive committee. We will need a motion for one person, then we will need a second for that motion. And then once we have a second, we can take a vote. Jennifer, you had your hand up. I think this is the right one. I'm getting confused now. One of these will do the trick.
So the motion, we can only like make a motion for Mike or Wayne,
Nope, Mike or Gary.
Mike or Gary.
Yes, they are that's okay. They are the only people eligible.
They're the only people eligible.
Yes.
Okay.
Because Mike and Gary are COC board members, they are the only people eligible to serve in this role.
Okay.
Do you have a motion you'd like to make? Okay. Does anybody have a motion that they would like to make? Okay. For who? You have to make a motion for a name.
For Mike.
Okay. So Rick Cipriani has made a motion for Mike to serve as the COC executive committee member. This is a new setup, Bill.
I'd like to second that motion.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Would anybody like to abstain? Which again means you are just saying, I neither want to vote yay or nay. You want to abstain and abstain? All right, and Jennifer made the motion. All right, well then, Mike, the motion has passed. You have been recommended to serve on the COC Executive Committee. So we will pass that information along to the chair, Kathleen Beckman, and then we will be in touch from there. All right, so now I am going to hand it over to my boss, Miss Daisy Correa. She's going to talk a little bit about the anti-camping law, the task force work that we have been doing. And there are some materials for this in your packet as well, okay? Those will come after the COC Executive Committee page. She's going to talk about the survey that's in there too. Daisy?
Okay, so as you all know, there is this anti-camping law that is gonna be in effect October 1. We've been talking about it in the previous meetings here. We did do a group before to see what we want to do for advocacy within this group. We have been holding task force meetings, and I know both Mike and Gary have been in attendance. We had our third one yesterday with a facilitator from OrCode, with Ian DeJong. He was facilitating more of a systems type conversation on how can we improve the system to help our homeless neighbors. We want to make sure that the system is prepared to provide the direct information, the correct information, and also a directive of how do we help and where do you go. I know that there's been a couple of flyers that have been probably distributed by the Sheriff's Department. We are also working on an R flyer, which is on your handout. It's more informative. It's more of how can we help? Where do you go? What are the options currently? Just because there are specific shelter options doesn't mean that we wouldn't be able to, or the system wouldn't be able to help you moving forward. This is to get you safely off the street, to get our neighbors off the street, to make sure that there isn't any other violations or anything like that that goes along with this. So we want to make sure that there's a safe place for our neighbors to go to, and from there connect our neighbors with services, housing options, employment options, so that we can move forward with that. So we will have a conversation about that as well. We also looked at a shelter survey. I know there was a lot of conversations behind why do our neighbors not want to go to specific shelters? And there was a request to survey why this is happening. So you will see the survey, and they will ask a couple of questions. I think, Victoria, did we send it out to, do we have it electronically? We want to share it. We want to make sure that it's shared with a lot of people so that it can get completed and we can gather this information, because this is going to help the system decide how do we improve our shelter stays and what do we need to do to change the accommodations or the services that are being offered. So this will definitely help us at the HOA and also help the shelter providers, and how do we improve the services at the shelter.
So you have a copy of this survey in your meeting packet. I have also printed 100 copies of this survey, and it is available online. If you look at the second page of the survey, there is a link. Down at the very, very bottom. So people don't have to complete this on paper, they can complete it online as well.
So the more responses we get, the better, so that we can look at the data, analyze it, and give some feedback.
So I'm going to pass out this stack here, and we are going to ask that you all help conduct some of these surveys between now and our next meeting.
I have a question.
Oh.
Who makes up this survey? Do you do this as part of a committee? Oh,
Yes.
and, oh, okay.
Yes, so there are committee members that have requested this information and that suggested some of the questions. We put it together at the HOA to make
Yeah.
sure that we are covering what is needed for the shelter providers.
Yeah.
And we put it together so that we can hand it out.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
yeah. By the way, what is your position
Oh,
in the HOA?
yeah, I'm the executive director, or the.
Oh, you're the,
Yes,
oh.
We met before. Sorry.
I understand.
No, you're okay.
I'm gonna pass these surveys down on either side. Please take as many as you want for the stack. Just make sure that everybody else can get some as well, to survey people.
I just have a question about the survey. It'd be okay if people didn't want to leave name or personal information,
That's
just to get.
perfectly fine.
Okay, all right,
Yes,
thank you.
yes. I don't know if it says optional on the top, but we really just want to make sure that we get the questions answered and get as much information as possible. If the demographic information is not completed, it's not going to be detrimental to the outcome of the survey.
Um,
On the sheet, it says October 1st. I was at Lemon Park last week and a sheriff and an outreach person from Safe Harbor showed up and the officer said August 1st is when that new law goes into effect. So is that, what is the October 1st regarding on that one?
On the flyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So they, just want to make sure I clarify something. The state law goes into effect October 1st. However, there are municipality, city and county laws that are in regulation now regarding sleeping overnight and certain hours that you can be in specific places. Some cities and municipalities are enforcing this, lightly enforcing it, or they're saying they're lightly enforcing these rules currently so that once October 1 comes, everybody knows where to go, where's a safe place to go to, so that we're not, or the sheriff's department or outreach or whoever is not forcing anybody out. So we want to make sure that they're taking an approach right now to educate and start educating all of our neighbors to make sure that they know what their options are. So if you're seeing those outreaches now from the sheriff's department, it's because they're being proactive. They want to make sure that everybody's aware of the situation before October 1. The flyer that we have here talks a little bit more about the resources, who to call, what shelter options are available, what the mission or the goal is of this flyer is to really inform everybody of what we intend to do. We want to make sure that you have a safe place to sleep. We want to keep you out of jail. We want to make sure that you know what the shelter options are and also connect you to housing services. That's the ultimate goal here, is connecting to housing services. So this is essentially what is more of an educational flyer for everybody to understand what's going to happen next and how we're being proactive to before October 1. I have a question.
Are they going to
Hold on.
open up more shelters?
Hold on. There you go.
Are they going to open up another shelter? I was at Pinellas Hope last year and Safe Harbor last year. And they were both horrid experiences. My caseworker was fired. Joe, the head guy, is leaving. And they broke the law constantly. They broke HIPAA. Because homeless people have to get shuffled off the street into Pinellas Hope or Safe Harbor, they can do what they want. I don't care for either one of those places. Don't care for St. Vincent de Paul. And like I said, I was at Pinellas Hope for 90 days. And if I didn't get out of there by 2 o'clock on my 90th day, they were going to call the police on me. I'm not a felon. I'm not a drug addict. I've never been arrested. I'm still an LPN. And I was bit up by bed bugs so horribly bad at Safe Harbor. I have pictures on my phone. My whole left side was totally swollen and inflamed. So I don't care for Pinellas Hope or Safe Harbor. And the staff at Pinellas Hope should all be arrested and thrown in jail. That's how I feel. I was there. And then why doesn't everybody on the committee spend 90 days at Pinellas Hope and then spend 90 days at Safe Harbor so they can see what it's actually like?
Thank you for your feedback, and this is why we want to do these surveys to make sure that we get this information back. You had one question here, and then I'll come over.
It's regarding the shelters. when you're on the streets and people keep telling you to go to shelters, but then people that are actually homeless, they tell you to be careful, you can possibly get raped, or your stuff's gonna get stolen, or, you know, just all kinds of horror stories. That makes you not wanna go. That's one of the reasons I didn't wanna go. And because who wants to go after hearing that? But then you have the officers, oh, it's great, it's a great place. No, it's not, because the people on the streets stayed there before. So it's like,
Yeah.
how do you want to go to a shelter? Because if one shelter's like that, they're pretty much all like that.
And this is the purpose of the survey, because they understand that there's some situations that are happening and they want to understand what's going on. And we need to get it directly from our lived experience.
Wait,
I know.
only speak with the
Oh,
microphone.
sorry.
It's okay.
And then when you get to the shelter, after you've gotten the courage to go, they tell you you're going to sleep outside. No, I'm gone from outside to outside. I turned around and they wouldn't take my dog. So that was another reason.
And pets is something else that we're looking at as well. So, but this is good feedback.
The intention of these surveys is for some of the members here, if they see homeless people, to ask these questions on the survey, yeah.
Yes.
Now, say this, some of the questions on here are fairly personal items.
Mhm.
Some people, you know, may be reluctant to reel that up. All these answers are not required, right, on personal stuff.
So what
Like
information? are you
birth
looking at
date
your phone? Yeah,
and
no.
maybe email, phone and
And maybe
things.
that's something we can
Yeah.
put as optional. Yes.
Okay. And then after the surveys, maybe if somebody does, turn them back to the COC or the A?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Yes.
So yeah, we're gonna ask that everybody take a stack of surveys, survey your neighbors experiencing homelessness. I brought extra clipboards in case anybody wants to take a clipboard home.
Yeah.
I have some extras as well, not just these. Please survey your neighbors experiencing homelessness. You have the paper surveys. They are also available online, so you don't just have to do the paper survey. Folks can do them online. And if somebody doesn't want to write their age or something, that's okay. If you could please encourage them to write if they were a senior or something like that, it would really help us. Because one of the things that we need to know is, for instance, how many of the folks that don't want to go into shelter are seniors? How many of the folks that don't want to go into shelter are over the age of 80 or under the age of 18? That's really important for us to know. So if somebody doesn't want to give their birth date, if you could, just ask them if they could write, hey, could you write if you're a senior or not on there? That would be really helpful. If they don't write that down, that's okay. There's still useful information if they leave a couple questions blank. It's not the SATs. So I hope that answers that question. Jennifer?
I have two things. You could just ask for their like year of birth.
Yep.
But back to like the why people don't want to go into shelters. I went to Safe Harbor when I got here, and I was there for less than 3 hours, and they tried to accuse me of smuggling in drugs and alcohol. Like what they do is they like to play mind games with the people that come there, and so they can make them go off. Because what happened was when I went there, I have a handicap parking sticker, and it's not there anymore, but there used to be a spot with a sign, like right there. Have you ever been there?
Yes.
Okay, so you know the entrance way. So like right there at the front. And I parked there and I went in and, like nobody gave, and they don't give you any eye contact whatsoever. They made me move my car, told me I had to move my car. I had to go in and out of the gate at 3 times, once to move my car. The other 2 times were to look for my driver's license in my car because I'd given it to them to get checked in. And I went to go look for my car and I'd asked them 2 different times. I was also told, I'm not sure what her name is, by the drug counselor that this was not the place for me because of the people that I was running away from, pedophiles, traffickers, you know, stuff like that. I was told that. And then
Captain Smith?
I was just told that was just like, not a place for me. And then I was also told it was a jail diversion shelter.
Which it is.
And I still have I have some of that conversation recorded. So I asked them 2 different times about my driver's license. Went to my car, and then when I came back in, one of the officers stopped me after they went through all my stuff again. And they were like, ma'am, we know you're new here, but when we have people coming in and out like that, we suspect they're smuggling in drugs and alcohol. And gave me the whole, parents riot to their kids, it's either in or out, in or out. But then at the end of that conversation, he told me, oh, they have your driver's license at the front desk. What he was expecting was, I told y'all, that's what they wanted. I said, I'm sorry, are you trying to make me snap? Because I've asked y'all twice. And I went in and I got my driver's license. Said it was kind of messed up, and the officer short was like, well, it usually is drugs. And, my experience, I started a petition. And that's what got me involved with all of this. And I would have to thank Kathleen Beckman for encouraging me to go speak up at the city councils. But, just like the mayor said, it's run by the sheriff's department.
Yeah, so I mean, this is why we want to get this feedback, because then we take it back to the task force and we ensure that we get this information and we let them know how they can change, improve, or make things better.
And then I have, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
And then, I have taken, an acquaintance, there, to drop her off a couple of times in the last, 6 months or so. And there's actually there's 5 rules on the fence in red. And number 5, how do we get them to be accountable for their own rules? Where number 5 states that staff and whatever they want to call the people coming there are to respect each other. They need to follow their own rules.
Florida model jail standards.
There was a question over here.
We had that conversation.
We had that conversation in the morning.
I think this is exactly what this form is for. I know there's a lot of personal information on it, but we don't have to put a name, email, phone number. We can actually omit personal information, so you can be honest and truthful with your experience without having to feel that, you're being called out on it.
Absolutely.
In the light of this, these particulars like this safe harbor, and I don't know about that other 10th place city, which you didn't even mention.
And
But
also,
maybe we should rather consider the idea of the camps. They're more loosely organized, there's not as many rules, restrictions, and so on for the people, I think there are just a few guidelines, which are provided in that law. But this might be a better idea, just a few things, like a portalet, have a couple of other services, and that would work much better for a larger, group of homeless people temporarily, until more can be worked into, this program procedures to establish a home, And the final result of any home that I believe is owned housing.
yes, absolutely.
Renting, rooms, anything will never last, it's only temporary. I know many people who are homeless again, who once temporarily had, something, and they're homeless again, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Wait, hold on. Only speak with the microphone, please. And Mike did have a question first. Sorry.
One of the things I would try to do, since I'm on the board of directors and on the executive committee is to emphasize that the solutions provided that Pinellas Hope and Safe Harbor doesn't have 100% of the fan base of people who have been homeless. I've been there on both facilities as a guest. And yes, they have their issues, sometimes serious issues. But, but this is what I think is that the state wants to create more of these type of facilities. But the problem is they have not provided any funding for it for this new law. Whereas that's going to be the problem coming October 1st and January 1st. So I'm going to make sure that the COC and hears about it firsthand from people here that some of the solutions provided are not viable for 100% of the people who are out there. All right. Some people are happy in the car. They might have a van, they might have a conversion van, and they say, hey, that's cool. I want, but they get it. So ultimately, I think it's because this law is forcing people with powers that be to say, hey, we got to come up with solutions. And right now, the government doesn't want to provide solutions. They're just passing it by. They want people to go out of the way. And they're forcing you who are on the street to get with the program and get into something, get out. But the problem is it's forced. It shouldn't be. But this is what we have to deal with, and that's what I'm trying to say. If you have ideas, put it down. So put them down online, put them on the sheet, whatever it takes. Let the local COC know, and we'll try to, and the task force people we're trying to influence know that this isn't a useful law. It's not even really a step in the right direction, just a tiny bit, because it puts the issue up front. So I'm just saying we gotta be a little patient and get the ideas to try to move it into a more positive direction for everything, because some of the solutions provided from Hope or Safe Harbor just not working for 100% of the people here.
Well, yeah, there's not enough. You turn it off.
There's not enough room at Pinellas Hope, Safe Harbor, St. Vincent de Paul for all of the people that are homeless. I still know people in the front at Pinellas Hope. I know people that live in the efficiencies in the back. I know people at Safe Harbor. I get calls and texts every day, 24 hours a day from people out on the streets. There's not enough room for all of the homeless people to go to those three god-awful places. So where are these people gonna go? And what exactly is the rule? Like from 8 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning, you can't be found sleeping somewhere? What does the rule state?
Okay, so I know we're a bit over time, but I will answer your question. It all depends on the city. So each city has a different rule on what is considered overnight. Some are from dusk till dawn, others are from 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning. It really depends on the jurisdiction. So it could be at 1 o'clock at nighttime. It really depends on the city. There is not one specific time frame for each city.
Where are the rules gonna be posted so people know?
So where are the rules gonna be posted? It really depends on the city. If you are in St. Pete, the most likely will put signs on the parks. I'm not sure, but it will be something that the city will have to decide, or each municipality would have to decide. Okay, I have time for one more question, and then we have to move on.
So it's a part of the law, that goes into effect October 1st. the cities and the municipalities are supposed to provide those safe, like safe sleeping areas with clean running water, like that's all part of the law. Are they working on that now towards, finding the funding and finding the places that they can do that?
So that is the purpose of the task force. That is what we're trying to advocate for. We don't know if they're going to send funds down to our COCs. If that does happen, we will have all of these different items on board, on the list to advocate for. So I don't know exactly what that looks like at the moment. Yes. Well, we'll go ahead. I know that we have some breakout groups. And I want to make sure that we're on time. Oh, we have one more question.
I've been doing this for quite some time. I actually did 3 years for the homeless at a church called The Rock. It's now formerly called The Rock, it used to be Solid Rock. There was a lot of homeless there. There was like 16 shelters for men and women. The pastor's wife passed away and he sold the properties and maybe have 3 left. And they are still active. And he would tell me I could not give people food unless they, in that time, have social security cards. I would not care. I would go make a sandwich and put it in a brown bag so they would have something to eat. And I actually had 2 homeless men staying in my alley in the back of my apartment because so they could be safe. And they had families, and most of the homeless people will get social security checks. They are some of them are alcoholics, some are mental health issues. For whatever reason, they chose not to live with their families. That's what a lot of homeless people go through. Everybody has a family. And for whatever reason, they cannot stay with their families. But, but it's rapidly. Like where we live in Clearwater, we have a homeless man sleeping in his car. And it's pretty terrible. At any time, you never know which homeless people are going to walk down our road. And it's like that. And nothing has been done about it. Nothing. And it's awful. It is, because I feel for all these people. There's a young girl, she's not here tonight. And she's at Pinellas Hope. And she was told to keep her mouth shut yesterday because she was trying to help someone that has mental health issues. And 2 police officers told her to shut her mouth. And that is not right. That is absolutely 100%. I know Lieutenant Captain Camp, that is not right. Some of these police officers need to step down and they don't need to be working there. If they cannot help people the way they're supposed to be helping them. I am friends with a police officer named Don Soderblom. He was in the Coast Guard. He is a police officer in San Bernardino, California. And I am educated. I was a kindergarten teacher. I worked at Tampa International Airport. I have 2 college degrees for me. And I am over my firstborn son that died last year, November the 12th. Let me tell you something. He was homeless for 2 years. I feel for every homeless person in this room and out in this whole city. We live in Clearwater. We go to St. Pete Monday through Friday. And it's a serious issue. And we are at war right now. I have a grandson that's 21 that's in the Marines. He signed up for 5 years. He was shipped off to Australia. So it's serious. And these people think that they know what they're talking about. Nothing is done while the continuing homeless people continuing more and more and more. You look on the news, people can't even afford to pay. Even my son, my other son, Christopher, cannot even, it costs him overhead $10,000 a month just to pay their bills. My daughter-in-law has to work. My daughter's in the same position up in Brantford, and she's in an Airbnb.
I am so sorry. I really am so sorry. But did you have a question? This is a really important story, and it's really, I hate to cut you off, but we are in a very tight timeline. And this is what we talked about at the very beginning of the meeting. I'm sorry you weren't here. But if we have other things to talk about that are not necessarily the agenda item we are talking about right now, I ask that we please put them in the parking lot so that we can come back to them later. It's really, really, really important. We didn't get to do these breakout groups last time, so it's really, really, really important that we get through this today. Otherwise, we will not be able to do our advocacy work, okay?
I just have one comment. I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, and I would like to see the two young men that were back, that were here last month. They would make a big difference in helping with this whole thing.
Yeah.
The two young men.
So this is why we voted for Mike to be part of that executive committee meeting. These are the stories that we want to bring forward and have a discussion. So you're being heard, and we will make sure that that's being brought up, and Mike will be charged with doing that work as well.
And I ask you to please be on the interview side of the breakout group room, because I think that you will have a lot to add to that group, okay? Of course, do whichever you prefer, but I think that I'm gonna ask you to do that side if that's okay. All right, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about these breakout groups, because we do have 30 minutes left, so we have 20 minutes for our breakout groups, okay? So what we're doing is we are doing the exact same breakout groups we did 2 months ago. We are gonna talk about interviews and a flyer, okay? So this half of the room is gonna be group 1 doing interviews. This half of the room is gonna be group 2 working on the flyer. You don't have to stay where you're seated. Feel free to move to the flyer if you'd rather work on the flyer, or to the interview if you'd rather work on the interview. The purpose of the interview, okay? We want to do video interviews with people who have or are actively experiencing homelessness, okay? 2 to 5 minute interviews. We don't have to interview everybody in this room. You don't want to be on the interview, you don't have to be in the interview. Your friend doesn't want to be in the interview, they don't have to be in the interview. But I have met 1 or 2 people who would be very excited to speak. So this is for them. What we will be doing here is putting together questions, deciding who we want to interview, and really driving home the purpose of this, okay? These interviews will be 2 to 5 minutes so that we can share them on social media, our website, and with the media. I got a text from ABC Action News yesterday saying, what do you guys have going on? And I was like, man, I wish I had a video to send her. So let's make it happen. If we work today on our questions, we can start getting those interviews scheduled, okay? So that's the interview group. The flyer group, I have more handouts for y'all, don't worry. This is the same flyer you saw last time. I went ahead and put the titles for the sections that the group identified last time, okay? So Kat, I know you were working on this. I'm gonna give you these packets here. And well, Kat can kind of fill in the group here on what was going on with the flyer, I think, because you were working pretty hard on that last time. So if you would like to work on the,
I think I gave you all my notes and I don't have them.
I put some of the notes in there. Don't worry, they're in the breakout group 2 section. There you go. All right, check the next page. There you go. Okay, so if you would like to work on the flyer, please come over here to this side. If you would like to work on the interview, please come over here to this side. And then I'm gonna ask that at 6:52, we stop and you pick 1 person from your group to talk about what on earth you have going on. Okay, and group 1 will speak first, group 2 will speak second. With that in mind, go for it. Do we have any questions on this side of the room? Kat will go through the flyer with you a bit, but do you have any questions about the activity? No? Okay. Do we have questions from this side of the group about the activity? No? Okay.
I was homeless, you know, it's bad.
Okay. I was gonna suggest that if you're gonna be on this group, you sit on the other side, or if you want to be on this group, you come sit on this side. Okay?
Yeah, one is the interviews and the other is that.
Interview, flyer.
That flyer thing.
Interview, flyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it made it more. Some clean, some addicts.
So we have a couple things for members, if you need them, you don't have to take them if you don't want them, but we have a low tag Pinellas, or Pinellas, or you might see some folks have these, round shoulders. When we do That's okay. I'm asking people to take those home, survey other people, survey yourselves, and then bring back to next meeting. So take your time with it. It doesn't need to be done immediately. Go right ahead. You know where we'll be. All right. So I did write down some of the notes from the last meeting. So we don't have to be married to that if there's changes or not.
Sure.
But so do you know the activity that we're doing right now? Okay, so what we're working on right now is this breakout groups. So this group right here, we're working on interviews that I was talking about. So we are trying to identify interview questions, who we might want to interview, that kind of thing, you know, themes, things like that. The idea here is to share the public, try and engage the public, destigmatize homelessness, to make sure it's not wanting to call the police because they see their neighbors sleeping outside. Wonderful. So right now we're working on the questions and the themes of the interviews. So that's what this group is working on, so that we can begin the interviews. Once we have all of that identified, we're going to start scheduling interviews. Anybody interview right now? Yes, ma'am. We're going to start scheduling one of those. We just need to have a plan in place first. So that's what this group is working on here. Please join. So that's interesting, but I'm gonna ask them right now, focus on the interview. We want shelter space to be part of the interview. Let's talk about that. But right now, I'm gonna ask you, really specifically focus on talking about these interviews. If we don't get the questions and stuff down, I can't do it. Not yet, no. What I want to do is I want to work with this group here, identify good questions to ask in the interview. Alternatively, we'd rather work on a flyer that is working on a flyer.
So sometimes to break the ice, you go, maybe they need.
I love icebreakers. That's a great time to hear. Icebreakers and bonuses for doing the interview. I love it.
Yeah.
As opposed to. Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome. Please make sure. I love that idea. I think that's really, really beneficial. All right. So, how did those groups go? Feel like made some progress? I hope. All right. So what I'm gonna do is, if it's okay with y'all, once I get untangled. I am going to ask each group to discuss what you discussed. So is there one person from this group here who would like to discuss the interviews? Rick? Okay, okay. So in that case, then I'm gonna ask this group to go first. All right. Who is presenting from this group? Are y'all a little, do we need more work before we feel comfortable talking about our work?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm thinking that the goal of these sheets is to make homeless people seem human. So which means we are presenting, what people's, one thing, what people's occupations were before they became homeless. And maybe a picture or two of these people, could be stock photos, or could be actual people, because that's what this is going to be about, actual people. And on like on the right side, we have what the costs. We had data from the Housing First seminar about what it costs per jail, shelter, and actual housing first, and it goes down high to low. So ultimately, it's less money to get people out of the street into a housing first type philosophy. In order for that to happen, the implication is you gotta have money for the housing first philosophy. There's, so on the top, the real counts criminalizing homelessness. Yeah, I thought it was good. That groups have a lot of anxiety. And they're wondering what's next. And people, we can put a nice quote saying, this is something that happens to others, not me. And then you find themselves homeless, because that's exactly what it is. You don't expect it, you don't plan for it, it just happens. And you gotta make the best of the situation. And what the legislature is doing is trying to force people into acting or behaving in a certain way. I mean, laws are supposed to do that, but something like this is old school, forcing people to do things that are against their will, essentially, or criminalizing you, just for being out of money. We could put that across. I think it'll be successful campaign to let people know that people are homeless are people. They're not some nebulous group that deserves to be shuttered away. Yes, they have encampments, but what else? The society letting them go. Because there's no housing first philosophy. There's no housing, no affordable housing either. So never mind housing first.
Yeah, because there is
Yeah.
housing available.
So that's what we're doing.
Me either.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much. That's awesome. That's awesome. So we do have a few more minutes. As a group then, I want to go ahead because it is really important, I think, that we get started on some of this work. So I want to ask the group then a couple of interview questions, okay? So in our previous meeting, questions like, how long have you been without shelter? Are you currently employed? Tell me about when your life was good. What made you homeless? Have you heard about the new law making homelessness a crime? If so, what are your thoughts? Are you receiving services from the community or DCF? If so, what are they? And have you experienced harassment from public officials? Are some of the questions. Do we have any other questions? Does the group have any other interview questions? So imagine me in front of you saying, all right, Mike, tell me about your experience with homelessness. For starters, I wouldn't do that because that's really intimidating. Don't worry. I would be intimidated if somebody did that to me. But, you know, imagine that. if I walk up to somebody and I say, just tell me about your experience, that's a little overwhelming and a little broad. But if I say, tell me about your experience sleeping on the street last night. How was it finding a spot to sleep? Can you tell me about finding an area to sleep where you didn't think you'd be harassed? But that's a specific question. And that feels to me a little easier to answer than, so what's up? Tell me about homelessness. So with that in mind, we have 1 minute left, and I'm gonna ask if anybody has any suggestions. Norm, you have your hand raised.
Well, I think one question on that questionnaire or so, yeah, which is missing is when you encounter the homeless person, right, and ask them if they know about the law, if it isn't, it's the basic thing of the law is you cannot sleep overnight in a public. In fact, a question would be, where would you sleep overnight after October 1st when this law goes into to be safe, and see what they say, what they put down, and so that's good. But that's a good question, I think, right? See what that person would say. Yeah, yeah. The other thing we just discussed as part of a thing is, as part of a camp, an old school bus. I know 2 people who sleep in cars, so they'll be safe. Or a van. I know one guy who has a van, and I know exactly where he goes. He's gonna keep it with that van at night.
Don't tell me where it is.
I know. Okay. The old school would help, people who don't have the benefit of a car or a van or what. They could be safe there, and that could be part of the so-called camp.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a reasonable alternative,
Yeah.
to these other places.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To establish with the cities, right?
I see you.
Provided they're aware of the looming situation where they could be sued.
Yep.
Once the start of the new year arrives, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they find, okay, that's my.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so hold on one second, I'll get to you in just a second. With that in mind, though, it is 7:01.
Yeah.
So is everybody okay if we continue for just a couple more minutes? Okay?
Norm suggested vans. Well, there's quite a few people at Trinity Cafe that sleep in their vans. And as a matter of fact, there's maybe 2 of them that we do know that the police officers let them park to be safe because they're women and they watch over them. And my thing is, like, if you're a female, everybody should be, like I said before, bus passes, little things to protect themselves, like mace probably doesn't work anymore, not really. But, we tried
that works on me.
Boulevard, we said National Boulevard, they need more police officers. But there are some really, really good ones and there's some not so good ones.
I think
what the
that's probably
problem
true
is.
of everybody.
Exactly.
That's a very good point. All right, one more note, and then I'd like to talk about questions.
The homeless need to be educated on what these new laws are.
Yeah.
So have at the parks advertise that the homeless are allowed to come to an auditorium or a park or a big church and teach them what the laws are and feed them and hydrate them. Teach them what their rights are. Now, you had said homelessness, sleeping at night was a crime.
Oh, no, I did not say homelessness, sleeping at night was a crime. Somebody else said that.
So, no, you did say that tonight, because I asked her about it, but anyways, is it considered a crime?
So that was a question just for the record, that is not a statement that I personally made. That is a question that was read. However, so sleeping outside, technically itself, sleeping outside is not a crime. There are laws, and I say this not as an attorney, as somebody who has never been to law school, and I am not giving legal advice. But itself, sleeping outside is not a crime. However, There are a lot of other laws that can be tagged onto that. That they can go ahead and give written arrests for, trespasses for, or arrests for. And now with the new law, it specifically says no city or municipality can allow sleeping outside at night. So while it's maybe not technically criminalizing it, the effect is ultimately criminalization. Because if a city isn't allowed to allow you to sleep outside and they are facing a lawsuit if they see you sleeping outside, what happens from there?
Okay, you've got residential and commercial. So are you allowed to sleep in your neighbor's backyard?
That's private property.
That's residential.
That's private.
You can't sleep on commercial property, but you can sleep on residential property.
No public property. So any property that is owned by the government, like the library here, was not acceptable. If a private business like a Walmart or something says you can sleep here, if a friend says you can sleep on my yard, that is private property and that is their prerogative, that is their choice. However, no matter what the library here wants, they, as of October 1st, will not be allowed to let you sleep outside. I mean, I know that they don't do that anyway, but you would not be allowed to sleep out front here because the city of Pinellas Park may face a lawsuit.
Well, then let's educate the homeless people what the new rules by DeSantis are going to be.
Yes, that is an absolute goal of ours, and that's one of the things the task force is working on.
Vegetables for them, feed them, hydrate them, and teach them what the laws are going to be.
Couldn't agree more. That is an entirely necessary activity. It is super important. I don't want anybody to be caught off guard. My goal is that nobody is caught off guard. All right, Jennifer, do you have any interview questions to suggest?
No, I had a question about the law here.
Okay, I'll go ahead with the question about the law.
So, say I did after October 1st, I come and I park in this library, parking lot or whatever, and I do it every night. What are the implications, the criminalization for me?
That is a good question. So here's the deal. If you are sleeping in a car and your car is parked somewhere you are legally allowed to be parked, that means that there is no, don't park here between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. It's not 2-hour parking. You've been there for 3 hours. If your car is legally parked and your car is legally registered, then you are allowed to sleep in your car in that space. Are you allowed to park here overnight? Or is this parking lot only open when the library is open? And I'm only using the library as an example because this is where we're standing. I am not suggesting anybody sleep in the library parking lot or anything like that. I don't want the library to think that. But yeah, so the rule is if your car is legally parked, then you can sleep there. Okay. Sorry. No, you're good.
So, I know up in Largo Public Library, there is a no overnight sleeping sign at both entrances. So if that's what I'm saying, if I do come here and I park and I sleep, or I don't have a car and I sleep somewhere on the property after October 1st, what kind of trouble can I get in?
Okay, so that might be when the police trespass. That would be, so the idea here is that the police do not, I'll get to you in 1 second. The police have very specifically told Daisy and I and our partners that they do not want to arrest people for experiencing homelessness. There was a period of time in Pinellas County where that was more commonplace than it is today. And Sheriff Gualtieri has been really, really, really specific that he does not want to return to that. That being said, my answer is, I can't tell you exactly what will happen, but there is a really good chance that you will end up with a trespass, that you will end up with written warnings, and that there are other things that will happen. They will not allow people to sleep outside because the deal is the city cannot afford the lawsuits. The city cannot afford the lawsuits.
We should all do it then.
So,
I was thinking about trying to organize people to all do it October 1st. Sleep out?
sleep out on City Hall steps.
Oh, you gotta put the mic up. and-
Not do it, a bunch of them, get everybody possible.
Oh, okay. So Jen, to answer your question, this is city property. It's not public property, it's not private property, it's city property. Okay, so they roll through here. Sometimes they sit here for hours. Not specifically to enforce anything specific, because they've let me sit out front and use the Wi-Fi till sometimes 11 o'clock at night. But when they leave, they let me know they're leaving and they want me to leave. Now, when they see vehicles parked in the parking lot, when they're rolling by, they will swing through here and tell you to move. And they will tell you they don't want to trespass you. They will ask you to move. They will tell you you cannot be here. They see you do it a second time, they're going to trespass you, which may possibly get you trespassed from the library. I don't know yet. So they are keeping an eye on it, and they are lightly enforcing.
I would say Pinellas Park is a little bit quieter.
They are, they are.
Compared to compared to Clearwater.
Yeah, and what I can say is, you know, I've heard a lot of youth vocalizing a need for a session on the review of the law. And I think that that's something that I will bring back to my board. Maybe we can have a session with everybody who comes in, and, you know, we'll do that information session on what are your rights, what is the law, how does that affect you? I think it's much more, it would be more informative to have like a Q&A session versus just reading the piece of paper and trying to interpret the law yourself. So I'll figure out if there's something that we can do as part of like a task force motion. Yeah.
From what I understand, October 1st is when it's implemented, but January 1st is when it's supposed to be starting to be enforced.
That is only for municipalities to be sued, but the law goes into effect.
They're already.
And also, like, along with the training session on actually the law, like the part where it talks about how the municipalities and the cities are supposed to provide that information as well is pertinent. Because, and what, it can't be up for more than 365 days or something like that. But they are to provide safe spaces for people with clean running water and this and that. So, yeah, and how that's.
And that is a suggestion that the law is saying, but yeah, we'll have more of that information session. Okay. Do we have a couple more minutes or we're going to adjourn?
Oh, we're already over time, but, okay, so with that in mind, Mike, would you like to adjourn the meeting?
Okay. Now, we've gone through a lot and we've done it actually almost on time. So it's a very good thing. And we actually had a very productive meeting today. We're making progress, and we will continue to make progress. And I will continue to bring up the issues you brought to the COC and the executive committee now that I'm on it. And with that being said, what do we got to do? We have to, so since we've done all the questions and everything, we got to close and adjourn the meeting. And we look forward to seeing everybody again next month.
The meeting is adjourned at 7:13.
7:13, right.